This is Brian Quinn over the line, their MVP of the playoffs 2 seasons ago. To Perez. In the corner, Hermes. Right across, Dougherty, score!
Dougherty, ever present in the box there. He's waiting for an opportunity. The ball is worked wide to Perez. Perez waits, slides it into the corner to Hermes. Hermes just pokes it along the boards. It gets a piece of P.J. Johns, but Dougherty's there to pick up the loose scraps, and he puts it away.
And there's that patented flip or the forward roll for Paul Dougherty, 5'2".
Once again, everybody, welcome to our Sockers Overtime Legends series. And as we reach the end of 2020 and bring a wrap up to our best of series on social media that we've been doing for the last few months and get ready for the 2021 season, it is my honor and pleasure to bring you Legend Series interview number 6 with a man who wore number 8 when he got things started for his San Diego Sockers career, and has probably worn a few different numbers over the course of many seasons and many clubs, indoor and outdoor. Paul Dougherty is our guest today on Sockers Overtime. Paul, thank you so much for the time. Happy holidays to you. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks very much for having me on, Craig. Love to talk about soccer. I love to especially talk about my favorite team, the San Diego Sockers. And yeah, love my time playing in this area. I still live in this area, and still go down to the sports arena, as I call it, the sports arena.
Yes.
And watch the team and actually see a lot of the current players playing right in locally.
You know, many folks know that we have our annual alumni game, and we invite folks and try and keep that Sockers family alive. And there are some who sometimes show up, and there's some who don't show up. And then Paul Dougherty is a guy who'll show up at training, you know, and I've seen you at training many a times and look forward to, in a post-COVID world, seeing you out there again. But we're here today to talk about yourself and a fascinating career. And I wanted to take you all the way back to growing up in Leamington. And to coming out of England to the United States. Obviously, growing up in England, I don't have to ask the question about when football gained your fancy. I believe it's officially injected into everyone's bloodstream, right?
That's right, yeah. That's right, especially mine, because I had 2 older brothers that's a sport we played, and really for every kid growing up in England, there's not much of a choice amongst other sports. It's not like it is in America here, where you may get pushed into some of the other bigger attended sports. It was definitely soccer, whether it's school or club, from an early age. Outside the front door, be kicking the ball around. Used to take the ball to school. Got it confiscated plenty of times for hitting windows, but from the early days, I really didn't start playing club soccer till more like 10 years old, which I guess for today's, they'd started me even earlier than that on club teams. But yeah. And then, I loved it so much. I played it so much during my off time. I managed to get into what we call the county team, and from there get scouted by one of the professional teams, Wolverhampton Wanderers, which was a big club, but still 50 miles away from my hometown, Leamington Spa. And I continued practicing with them twice a week from the age of 13 through 16.
Wow.
Yeah, and 16 is the leaving age of, was back then, 16, that's when you left high school. So at 16, they offered me a full-time position on the staff as what they call an apprentice professional. Mm-hmm. And then after 2 years as that apprentice professional, which you got paid, and you had to do other jobs, cleaning jobs, to kind of supplement it, that played in the reserves, played in the youth team. And then before the age of 18, they would let you know whether they would offer you a professional contract, which was a big step, because still 1 out of 10 of those players would just get cut from the team. And whether you could go on and have a good chance of being a professional. So in my case, it was a lot different from everybody else. I got to 6 weeks before my 18th birthday. They tell you what your position's going to be, whether they're going to take you on or not, and give you an extra contract, or just you can go find another club if that was possible, or find another job. Well, 6 weeks before my contract came up, I went into the coach, and he said, "Sorry, but you're too small. We're not offering you a contract. You're free to. You have two choices. You can stay here and just see out the 6 weeks, or you pay your whole 6 weeks up. You don't have to do anything. You go check out other teams." But I'd been with that team for so long, I just decided to stay an extra 6 weeks.
Yeah.
Do this, seeing the time out, I was playing regularly in the reserves there. And funny as things can change, 4 weeks later, when I was still 17, because they tell you just before your 18th birthday, I got into the actual first team. Played, Not only, and that was as an apprentice, which is rare. So 17, didn't even know about I was getting in the first team, because I thought I was still, going to leave the club. No one had told me.
Right.
I knew I was doing well in the reserve team, the team just below the first team, and I practiced with the first team also, but still had no idea. And I still made plans, or was in the process of making plans to move to another club. And then I showed up one time, got to the locker room, sat in the dressing room, and then the coach, it happened to be a coach had got fired 2 days before, and a new coach came in.
Yeah. And
he selected the team. And I was the one change that he made to the team that I'd been playing at the top level in English. It wasn't called Premier League now, but now it's called Premier League.
Right.
And it happened to be against our biggest local rivals, team that was only about 8 miles down the road, home game. And guess he didn't tell me because he didn't want, there's a thing in England where don't tell them because they might get nervous.
Yeah.
So even my mum knew, my brother knew, they were driving up. So there it was. An hour before kick. Yeah, I know. An hour before kick, I was like, "Oh my God, this is my dream come true right now." Just amazing position to go out on that field and wear that Wolves jersey in front of the home fans, and I just said to myself, "Look, this happens once in your lifetime. Your boyhood dream. Go play with the confidence and do what you can do," and actually finished up getting, which actually brings us to how I got to San Diego Sockers. I got a man of the match by the national newspaper. It rates it, which was crazy because West Bromwich Albion were a really good team, we tied 0-0, which was actually a decent result because our team had been was at lower, actually got relegated that season.
Right.
And then the coach kept me in the team for the final 5 games of the season. It never even took me off the pitch for 1 minute. I played every minute of the game, 5 games. Which was kind of rare for a 17-year-old, and especially a 17-year-old that was obviously the smallest player in the league.
Yes.
So it was just like completely turned around from how it was 6 weeks earlier.
I mean, what a story to start off this Legend Series interview, because in terms of a Premiership debut, you know, I mean, that's a story. That is one kind of story.
Yeah.
I just want to kind of go back and underline this. So you were basically, you know, in the NFL, they call it the Turk, you know, in training camp, that comes around and says, okay, you know, puts his pink slip in your locker room, says, bring your playbook and come on over. Basically, 6 weeks to go, you've trained, you've been a junior apprentice, you've been there since you're 13, you're in your 6-week training camp, and now 6 weeks to go, and they're like, listen, buddy, nice knowing you, nice seeing you, here's the deal. You got some time, we'll pay you out, go try and hook on. Someone else might give you a shot, you're just not going to make it. You're like, look, I'm just going to keep playing with you. Let's find out what happens. And 4 weeks later, one coach is gone, next coach is in, looks, says, I want that guy in. Boom. Man of the match. Boom. You're playing in the Premiership.
Right.
You've got your names in the book.
I know, huh? Crazy how that goes. You know, the manager at the time says you're too small. So once you're told you're too small, you know that you're a goner. Right, I'm not going to grow. I knew I wasn't growing, or so there was no way I could change that. It wasn't like, oh, you got a bad bit of form. I know I've played better in the past. I can play better, and I've stayed. But I was told you're too small to be playing at this club. By what I know now is, it was a big defender. The coach was a big defender, and it was more of a. He wouldn't play the way I would have played. He would more of a long ball player. So, and the guy that came in was a bit more technical, and sort of had, you know, different opinions, sort of thing. But I'd only stayed on. I didn't even stay on thinking that I would ever get a contract out of it, let alone playing the first team. And I was just trying to get other teams to see me while I was out playing for the reserve team. So. Yeah, it was the best. I've had some good times at San Diego Sockers when you win the championship in front of the home crowd, and that I won on my birthday, and they sang happy birthday to me. But to actually be there at 17-year-old in the top level in England was definitely the highlight of my life.
Yeah,
I'll never be beaten. Yeah,
that's not a bad place to start. There's no question about it. And I think it's fair to say that the love of football infected Paul Dougherty to the point that you weren't going to put up those boots at any point until they would have to run you off the field. As we shall document. Now the path. Because it had to have been interesting, wasn't it? In that here you are with Wolverhampton, and you're with this club, like I said, that you've grown up with, but at the same time you were with them during a very tumultuous period in the club's history, where they're going through multiple relegations, they're dropping down divisions, and you know, I mean, now we're talking about a Premier club, but you know, at that time, it seems like there was a manager getting sacked like all the time, and your turnover in the front office all the time, and that had to have been for a young person a little bit skittish as well.
It was a weird situation. It was back in the late 80s, mid to late 80s, and money wasn't around like it is nowadays. Teams were like you know, always looking. There wasn't the big investors then, and teams were always close to going bankrupt and stuff like that. And our club had built this massive stand, and they built it so far away from the actual field. They miscalculated by pretty much 100 yards, and it was stuck out on its own. And the other 3 stands were close to the field, and if you needed binoculars to see the game from the other stand. And they got themselves into a lot of debt. So the new owners came in. They didn't want to put money into it. They wanted to build something that couldn't get built. And it was really a fact of, we've got to start cutting the wages also. Not in that first season I played, and not so much the second season, but after that, yeah, they were struggling with the finances over there, which is hard to believe now. What you see now in the Premier League, but it was a tough time. I see so many players come in and out, and then it got down when we went down to the lower league. That was the time I'd had so many coaches by then. And another coach came in. He's another 6-footer that liked to launch the ball 60 yards. And at that point, I was like, and I'd played a little bit up in the gymnasium, which is, you could say it's similar to indoor soccer, but the shoes are different. We weren't playing off the walls. It was a bit more futsal but with a bouncier ball. So I'd always enjoyed that. So it got to the point 3 years into it. So my last year of my 3-year contract that they gave me, that I'm starting to think, is this right for me? Shall I look somewhere else? And there's been a bit of press about the indoor gaming. A lot of former indoor pros, even household names over there, played there. So I took that press clipping from my debut game where they gave me man of the match and sent it away to San Diego, a copy of it to San Diego Sockers, wrote, in the days of writing letters before the internet. And they wrote me back, says, yeah, if you want to come out and for a trial, I'll come out. You can come out, you have to pay your way, but we'll reimburse you if you do make the team. So I go, so yeah, I'm going to try. I'm going to try. So another coach came in about roughly 4 to 6 weeks before my ticket had been bought, because the other coach had not played me in the team. He comes in, he gives the team that the previous coach had, give them a chance. They were losing. Then he put me back in the team. And then we started winning. We won 3 out of the 4 games, tied the other. And I've been on a losing streak before that. And then he called me into his office one day and says, look, I don't want you to go. He changed his mind. So I had 6 months left on my contract. But he said previously, when he first came in, wasn't in my plans. It was okay, go ahead, book your ticket, sort of thing. So then he was in the situation where he wanted me in the team. I was doing well for the team, but he also felt bad that I was, that gave me his word and got go ahead and book your ticket and reimburse you. So I thought about it. It was middle of winter. It was when by the time he said it was just before Christmas. Weather was awful. I think I'll go. So I think mentally I sort of made my mind up. I was enjoying my soccer back then, and so I thought I'd roll the dice and I'll go and just go out there for a trial. And everything was like just completely different from first of all, I didn't know you could even practice indoor, outdoor. With all practices being out, so, was surprised at how good the weather was. I didn't even have the right shoes. One of the funny things is I had these like running shoes on, so it kind of made it a little bit harder than what you would with indoor shoes. So yeah. So Ron got me says, what size shoes are you? I'll get you a pair, and some sponsors or something like that. And I said size 7. And I'd say 7 meaning 7 in English. Yeah. Well, 7 in American is a smaller size. So, and I know you wore them, fit like a glove, no room to push up. And so I was, first week, I'm like wearing these shoes and I'm like, these are killing me. When are these going to stretch out? And I was stuffing them at night, putting stuff in to make them bigger. I'd only ordered a size less. So my toenails were falling off, He didn't realize I meant English and got me the American size. So I think I threw those away after a couple of weeks, and then came up end of the 5 weeks, and he moved a player on, Gary Collier, to Chicago, and then a visa came available, so I played the rest of that season.
It must have been. So tell me about the cultural change from going from a Wolverhampton program that's been an outdoor program that's structured, that's, English, Premiership, and then tumbling, but still in the soccer pyramid, to now palm trees, Julie V, punching out assistant coaches, all of the crazy zany characters, and playing a game with walls, a game that's got a completely different dynamic, but one that obviously, and it must have been intuitive to you, fit your skill set like a almost too tight pair of shoes.
Yeah. So, I mean, it was just the enjoyment of having the big difference. Now, how beautiful it is and green and bright and is one thing, but I'd come in and my fitness was really good, so it felt like it was easy to up and down the field, because when you come from outdoor to indoor, you can do that. When you go from indoor to outdoor, it's harder to get up from. So I was flying, and I didn't know that you had to really change. When we did the six-a-side outside, sometimes we'd have more players on six-a-side. I would stay on for like 4 or 5 minutes, sometimes with the younger lads, and the coach would look at me, what are you doing? You got to come off after a minute or two. But I was always, because it was kind of middle of my season, it was middle of their season too, I was actually a bit fitter than the rest of them as far as endurance, going up and down. It was the short, sharp stuff that was a little harder for me. So once I got, Ron was pretty good at teaching you stuff like that. And once I kind of figured out the boards, it was a lot different. It was just so much more enjoyable, because you always chance of scoring. You have to defend. I was kind of a two-way player anyway. So, and I always liked to be involved. One of the problems with the lower leagues in England was they would just send it from big defender to fast forward, and that was really most of the play. So it was just a heck of a lot more enjoyable for a midfield player,
Incredible stuff. And like I said, you jump in as a rookie into a very wild season for the San Diego Sockers. Do you remember kind of some of the tumult of that club? I was literally just working through a clip that was discussing where they thought Julie V would have been banned from the club for life for punching Johan Arnio.
Yeah, so I've seen instances like that. When teams are losing, it wasn't that rare in the English league. If you're not doing your job, there'll be discussions at halftime, heated discussions, because everybody was thick-skinned over there. So that if someone had something to say to you, they'd say it, and you take it if it was deserved. Just you just have to accept it, sort of thing. But I mean, at the end of the day, if you're losing, that was so. It did go on in the San Diego locker room when we were losing, but that's also a sign that you got winners out there that are upset now that you're losing. Yeah. And I've seen plenty of turnarounds because there's been discussions at halftime that has really fired teams up. Come out at halftime and play much better second half than first half, sort of thing. Yeah, absolutely.
Let's talk about that 87-88 playoff, because you come into a championship team, but that team had its back against the wall. It's one of the series that is not available on YouTube, the Western Division Final against the Kansas City Comets, where the Sockers were down 3-1 in the best of 7 and had to fight their way all the way back to win that championship and get to Cleveland, which you wind up sweeping Cleveland in the final, but that makes really that Kansas City match the true final in terms of if you lose that, you guys are out and you never get a chance to play Cleveland. Tell me a little bit about that series, one I have no access to. How did you guys fall apart and how did you put it together?
There's a lot of playoff games. So Kansas City, I always felt was a really tough place to play in, especially when they started getting up. I think when they went two games to 1 up, everybody in that stadium believed they were through. They'd done us. They'd beaten us, except for maybe us lot. You know, so. They were almost too cocky, I would say, for that. Did we finish up beating them at their place in Game 7?
That's a good question. I would have thought, no, you finished first. You guys, I would assume
oh, yes,
that,
we had a good season that season. That's right.
I think you must have won 5 on the road and then 6 and 7 at home.
So I remember Game 6, going back to their place in Game 6, which was really when you could just you had that feeling like these guys. Sometimes there's a different level of atmosphere when you've played in a stadium before and you play a regular season, and then this is before in the ball's kicked. Yeah, okay, when goals are scored, the crowd gets into it, but right before the kickoff, you just can feel a different atmosphere. The crowd's still standing, you know, when the kickoff is on, and it's all for it. But yeah, we had some amazing players in those days who were not phased under any sort of pressure. I think everybody keeps it cool, sort of thing. I mean, if to play against a team that had such a push behind them, and I remember they had some good players too, good goal scorers. Yeah, to come out in that game, that was huge. Yeah.
Incredible stuff. And then, of course, you guys, as I mentioned, you swept Cleveland in the championship series, 4 games to none. You won your first title. 1988-89, your second year, the club actually had a losing season, one of the very rare losing seasons in soccer's history. Had to limp into the playoffs, and then you run the playoffs. And I've seen, including an incredibly dramatic final series against Baltimore. What clicked? What turned things around in that season, if you remember?
I think it was a case that we had the players, but the players just didn't. Maybe, you get that certain level of how important is this league game compared to how important is the playoff game. There was definitely a bigger pressure players put on themselves in the playoff compared to players who would normally just stand up front would be actually hustling back to help the team, sort of thing. I think it got to the point where once we could just get into the playoffs, we felt like we had a chance. And then you saw it in the first playoff games. This player's playing differently now and playing more for the team now than they had all season, type of thing. So I think it was more of a team effort, and certainly when you go in there, I don't know if with the 8th seed or something like that, people are telling you can't do it, then you're just adding fuel to the fire too, right?
Yeah, I think that was one of the years you had to go through Dallas, if I'm not mistaken, to get to the final, and then play a classic 7-game final where Game 7, I remember clipping that game, involved David Burnett, 6th attacker for Baltimore. Should have been called for a handball.
Straight goals for Mobilio, and it's 6-5. Now, before that, here's the play in question. David Byrne is the goalkeeper. He can only touch the ball with his hands outside the box. Oh, that's a terrible close call. I'll tell you what, Randy, if San Diego loses the championship, Herb Silva and Marty Templin cannot sleep with that. That's a bad call.
They have to bear the blame for that goal. Not necessarily the championship, but that's the worst call I've ever seen in an MISL game.
Well, under pressure like this, yes, I'd say so myself.
You guys were on your heels. They cut it all the way to 1. And I would submit that might have been, I don't know what you think, but I think that might have been the best playoff game in MISL history.
Yeah, that was pretty exciting, huh? Because we'd had it, we had it, and then we came so close to not having it, right there at the end, and it was just they'd scored so many goals, they'd pulled that 6th attacker very early.
Yes.
And then goal goes in. All right, we're still okay. Next goal goes in. All right, Dan, we're still looking at the clock thinking, oh, are they going to score another couple here? And when that incident that you said, it was going into the goal and the guy's diving outside his box, should have been a penalty would have sealed it for us, basically. And it would have been the biggest injustice in soccer, right? Because obviously the referees saw that. There's no way you couldn't see that.
Yeah.
And it's only because they kind of wanted to make it keep it close or something, that they let it play on. It's not going to affect the game anyway. And of course, if they score again, now it does affect the game, because if the next goal goes in, we go to overtime. So, it was pretty exciting because their fans on their feet, they were going nuts, thinking they were going to win it here because they'd scored so many consecutive goals, in that small arena over there.
Valentine flicking it back to Burns. 45 seconds left. Burns sends it deep. Ralph Black out man back there. Here's Houskevy. Far post and headed out by Brian Quinn. Freddie Thompson down the left side. Block. Here's Hermes after Valentine. An open net chance. He'll send it ahead for Carrots. A race, and Byrne will beat Carrots to the ball. Oh, and I'm surprised Hermes didn't go for the open net.
Final chance, Randy. Here it comes when David Byrne brings it down.
Up the field it comes. To Houskevy. Nagara's got it. 14 seconds left. He'll smother the ball in the penalty area. The toss to midfield over the head of Byrne. 5 seconds to go. Byrne will clear it.
They're going to win.
3, 2, 1. It's over. And amazingly, the mystique is still alive. The San Diego Sockers are once again the MISL champions.
Incredible stuff. Now, of course, the very next season, you sign with the Baltimore Blast. Maybe you're so impressed by that comeback and those fans, I don't know. But what was it that led you to Baltimore for that year?
I think I came to the end of my career and then contract. And then Kenny Cooper is another English coach. He it was that time when the salary cap came in and there was changes, so there was had to be a lot of maneuvering with I know I didn't have the best of season that season, but I had a really good season the season before. So he came in and actually it finished up being I wouldn't say a mistake, because I had 2 pretty long injuries when I don't tend to get injured much at all. I've been very, very lucky throughout my career, but I got 2 consecutive injuries. So I missed a good part of the Baltimore season. And then, of course, we played Sockers in the final, and that's I kind of regained my form in the playoffs. And that went to the 7th game, right? It was 7th game back in Baltimore also.
Yeah, and you scored the first goal of the game, if I remember right.
Yeah. So, Sockers did it again. They and actually it was funny because we had a team meeting before the game 7, and it looked like we were, we'd become favorites because the game was in Baltimore's home field. And I said to the players, I says, listen, guys, don't say anything in the press about we're going to win this and don't give them any incentive to play even better than what they can play. All right, just keep, be professional sort of thing. And of course, Baltimore had won the league easy. We had and was the number 1 seed. So one defender who'd never won a championship before come out and start saying, "Yeah, we've got this. We're too good for the Sockers," sort of thing. Oh God! So after that, yeah, it was. I could see him. I actually saw the Sockers walk in from to the locker room, and I could just see that focus on them. I thought, oh no, I don't like the look of that. Yeah.
It was one you had seen before and would soon see again, because you come back to the Sockers for the 2 seasons of MSL. They fired the eye out for the last 2 years. I know that they were looking to do an indoor-outdoor hybrid that did not pan out. To kind of go back, harken back to the old NASL days. But at the same time, you were part of championships 9 and 10. And I wondered, what I wanted to ask you about that was Ron Newman's flexibility as a coach, because you see him having won with Kaz Dana and Gene Wilrich. You see him having won with Bronco Segota and Steve Jungle. You see him having won by the end with yourself and Thompson Usean, and Woodbury, and a completely different cast of characters for the most part than you had seen throughout the first decade of soccer's history. And I wonder if you could speak to maybe Newman as the GM. You had to deal with him as a coach and as a GM, but in the way that he would kind of wheel and deal to keep his team at the cutting edge.
Yeah, so you'd see these players when you're talking about those final 2 championships there, player for player, you'd look at that and you'd look back a few years earlier and you go, the quality of players coming in was not as good as the players going out, and for most teams, you would see certainly a drop down in performances, especially in results. Now, that wasn't the case. I think even some of those last seasons with the new players coming, were really, really good seasons we were having, with what could really be called lesser players, not as big time players. And Ron was great at that, making the right, spending the money right, because it was salary capped there, and he got so much right as a coach. And I've been through so many coaches, and there's no one that's got as many things right as Ron has, or even come close to making the right decisions. Certainly. He hit so many home runs with recognizing players. I mean, even my situation. One of the people said, "Oh, he's too small." Also for me, and he got me for nothing, basically, on a free. So, but there was a lot of players like that who were not even big star, not even, big time players in their own team, and coming and doing well on the Sockers. So yeah, I remember Victor Nogueira. He got injured at one point, and he was huge for us after he left from that team. Absolutely massive. And
I just actually did that. I just did that clip. He was the Cleveland Force keeper in your rookie season, and against the Sockers, he ruptured his Achilles just ball handling around the red line, and that ended his season. Of course, he had surgery. That would end many players' career. He comes back and is basically MVP of the league the next 3 years, or keeper of the year or MVP, playing for the San Diego Sockers.
Yeah, I know. Ron sees that. I mean, Ron had a lot of knowledge, from being in the league so long. So he had that advantage too. But certainly there was stuff tactically his stuff was even some people you could say it was certainly a step ahead of the rest of the coaches around the league. So yeah, nice to coach you wanted to play for, which was important too, because and certainly in my situation, he's got as much out of me as he could have got out of me, basically. So I'm not going to only speak for myself, but I certainly think that a lot of players that weren't great had great seasons with the Sockers, and then if they did move on, they didn't, went back to our average season. So.
And Dougherty took it away. Down to Santos, a handball. Here's Dougherty in front, right back. He scores! Dougherty.
San Diego lightning quick to take advantage of counterattacks. A nice little heel flick off the outside of the foot over to back to Dougherty from Castillo. It starts here, and Doyle was claiming that it had gone out of play, actually, and Dougherty takes off on the counterattack. He slots the ball inside to Castillo. Castillo flicks it back to him with the outside of the foot. Nice little spin, and it's put away well by Dougherty.
Much like the very beginning of your career, where you are in a dream position, but you're on a club that was in tumult. Here, you're here in this middle part, this glorious middle part of your career. You are in a club that is golden, in a league that's in tumult. You've got year over year from 88 to 92. You've got teams folding, teams being resurrected. The Force become the Crunch. The Steamers become the Storm. And at one point down to 7 teams, and then of course at the end of 1992, the MISL at that point MSL folds, and you're left with career decisions galore, kind of in the prime of your athletic career. What were you seeing as a player in terms of the league falling apart while the Sockers were still doing well?
Yeah, that's a tough one, because I mean that's not the first time it's happened. I had a couple of seasons in Houston where I finished up being the league MVP, and then the league folded. So it was kind of a bummer to have a year like that, and then next season there's no league in there. Kind of worked out well for me because I went to the MLS, but I still would have still played indoor. Would have been probably my first choice. Yeah, it was here we go again sort of thing. I mean, and to be fair, that those owners, the 7 owners that there was, all my hats off to them for hanging in there and to believing in the game, and losing money or putting in so much effort into the sport. Because it really is an enjoyable sport, not only to play, but to watch. And I still think it's my first love, even though I constantly watch soccer here on TV. And I have great memories of playing outdoor soccer. And I think even during my career, I played finished up playing just as much outdoor as indoor. Yeah. It maybe even more when you consider I started at 17. Yeah.
So you had a decision to make as a pro indoor player that had to have been at some level of demand, because there was the NPSL and there was the CISL that was born out of kind of the ashes of MSL. And of course the Sockers put a team in CISL. You went to the Buffalo Blizzard, I believe, NPSL. What were the differences between those two leagues at the time, and what was that decision process like for you? What were you presented with?
So I think it was a case of the leagues folding, the MSL's folding, and it was kind of cleared out my stuff there, and then it was I don't think it was any certainty that there was a league coming back, and I'm going to be played in San Diego, and the Buffalo team had been in contact with me. Sockers Ron wanted me to stay here, but it was really a financial decision there to go to Baltimore. There was a new club there, and they had great support. So yeah, and then I did four seasons there in that freezing cold over there. That was a shocker, but managed because it becomes a shortened season. Now I got more into, could play a longer season outdoor from then on. So yeah, Buffalo for 4 winters, and then used it a couple of times. It was Florida in the 95-100 degree heat, 3 o'clock game on a Saturday.
You had it backwards, man.
Yeah. Doesn't get much more different than that in the country, does it?
Oh my goodness. Well, I was gonna say, on Wikipedia they list you as having played for 16 different professional teams during your career. Is that an accurate number?
Yes, but it's a little bit skewed because I played for Tampa Bay Rowdies, and then I played back in Buffalo, and then I went back to the Rowdies. Their name was different there, and then I know it's a lot. It was a lot anyway. It was a lot, but yeah, and some of that was a case of I have to go find a team because the league's folded. So
right.
There was no league to play in. It also could have been the fact that I'll have to check the numbers on that, because I don't know if they count. Season in Houston, went to play outdoor, came back, played for Houston again, same Houston team, because the season had taken that break. And would that be counted 2 times at Houston or yeah?
Right.
And then so.
Always worth it to check out your Wikipedia and see if there's anything that needs an edit, because I just thought it's fascinating because, as you said, multiple teams, multiple leagues, bouncing, hopscotching. You had to be playing out of a suitcase all the time, Paul.
Yeah. Well, I didn't mind that because I didn't come over here didn't know anyone, didn't have a family over here. So, and I felt like because I played in the English league where pretty much 10 months a year, you play 7 months of an indoor season. What am I going to do for 4 months before season starts again? Right. And I just felt that was the time I should go play outdoor and keep fit, see a different part of the country. So I was pretty active. I think it wasn't until really late on, I think it might have been 3 or 4 consecutive seasons I'd gone on, and then I took a rest in between seasons, and that after I'd taken a rest, I had a really good season. I was like, oof, I feel fresh, I wasn't coming in, I'd play, go into the playoffs. Your team was a week before the outdoor season starts. You finish the playoff with one team, start the season, the next week, and then come back, and you're a week. You arrive a week before the season starts. So it's a year round plus another season after that. So. And then on top of that, I never got injured much.
Right.
I mean, if ever there was a time to get injured, it was when I kind of need it. So, yeah, I do feel like I know I got as much as I could of these little legs.
I mean, you had to, obviously you kept your speed throughout your career. I think to our modern team and a player like Brian Farber that has managed to keep his speed at age 37 and still be, one of the fastest players on the field generally when he's out there, still be able to have that burst. What do you do to keep that burst?
Well, the indoor helps because you always got to go. You go fast. It's how much effort you put into at the end of it. If you're always striving to be as fast as you can, you're all going at that pace, I think if on an outdoor field where your runs are much longer and you can't maintain 100% of a sprint, then you will slow down a little bit earlier. But I think sometimes indoor, because it's just a short and sharp burst, that helps to maintain some of your speed. Plus, if you're avoiding injuries, it helps too. Yeah,
for sure. Now, just a couple more questions, and I hope you've enjoyed kind of this trip down memory lane, so to speak. But you mentioned that you played in MLS, and so obviously when you're speaking about the Premiership, you're talking about even a different level, especially to where MLS was in the late '90s. But in that nascent period of Major League Soccer, what was it like being in the league at that time? I know Ron Newman was still, plying his trade in Kansas City and there were several indoor players, right? From Preki to Paul, right? There was a little bit of indoor in MLS.
There was a little bit, but and Preki was amazing indoor and outdoor player, but there wasn't as many as you would have thought, because I think a lot of the players that played indoor weren't either good enough by that time, because I think there's a lot more kind of like gotten older.
Yeah,
they were in the mid to late 30s. Of course, I was always one of the youngest in the when I played for San Diego Sockers. Most of the time, I was the youngest. So they did. I mean, it was good. It was run very well. The only problem was it was the days of when you'd have 20,000 spectators in a 60, 70,000 seat stadium. So you lose a bit of the atmosphere. I think Columbus Crew was the first soccer stadium, and that was a nice place to go play when they opened up their new stadium. But since then, it's changed a lot, and that atmosphere really is, and it's a little bit more comparable to the indoor atmosphere, really. Standard was good. I mean, it's great for me to have come over here, and you're on planes with people, and people didn't even know they had an indoor soccer team, or didn't even know there was a professional soccer team in the States, and you'd have to explain to them what's going on now, and look at it now. I mean, soccer outdoors big, international soccer's big also, and indoor soccer's remained around. And then parent you talk to nowadays, the kids or know someone's kid that's playing soccer. So and Ron Newman was really big at promoting soccer. Some of those coaches, I felt like Alan Hintons and all those, are always promoters of soccer, and they always knew that if they came from a European background, that hey, they need to catch on here. So it was good that those people, and we used to go to clinics. We were encouraged to go to clinics and get the kids hooked on soccer also. So it was great to see how much it's just exploded in this, because that was what we were used to ourselves.
Well, and it's just really fascinating when you think about it, Paul, in terms of when you arrived in the United States, there was no first division, National Soccer League. NASL had folded. MLS was still like 8 years away from coming into being. And MISL was where it's at, man. Full arenas, coverage on ESPN. Obviously, as we mentioned, a lot of financial trouble for the league during those years. And yet it was where the pinnacle of American soccer was, and American soccer interest. Now here we are, 2020. MLS is 30 minutes away last night from beating Liga MX for the CONCACAF Champions League. Yeah. This league is risen to a high level. You've got, as you mentioned, every kid that you meet on a local soccer club. Well, if they're not Man City, they might be Arsenal, or they might, but they've got an EPL team that's their team, right? And their kids living and playing in San Diego. And yet, if you tell them now, San Diego Soccer's indoor championships, MISL, MA, there's going to be that, what? That you would have gotten if you had asked a kid in 1989, hey, what about Everton against Leicester City Yeah, and they'd be like, huh,
Yeah.
what? So isn't it interesting how it's all turned where now indoor is fighting for the memory and the bandwidth, where before it was all that was there.
Yeah, but I think anyone that goes and watches an indoor soccer game really do enjoy the sport. It's a great, spectacular. And going back to that, where we had 2 players play for the US national team on a Wednesday night and were subs for Sockers on the Saturday. That's how big that league was. The national team players couldn't get into to the lineup. And there's players all over the league, all the US national team that were not big players in the league, but would start for the national team. Crazy.
Would never happen where you grew up, my friend.
No. Yeah.
All right. So kind of along those lines, you were in so many leagues that fell apart. It wasn't your fault, Paul. But I was wondering if you saw things along the way, whether it was common mistakes that were repeated, whether it was just as simple as the money running out, or anything that we could use for advice or lore to build upon in the modern game.
Well, it tended to be the teams that weren't doing well. So if you saw a team that was in bottom 2 of, say, an 8-team division, two 8-team divisions, the bottom 2 of each league, you'd be looking at that and you'd see the crowds go down, and you'd be going into it, and the atmosphere wasn't what the rest of the league was like. And then you'd always look back on that and go, oh, they're going to struggle at the end of the season, type of thing. So you could kind of see the writing on the wall for those teams, but it tended to be the teams. I mean, when I played in Houston there, I thought they'd give it one last go. They were bottom for the very last, for the 2 seasons, the very last position. And then they put money into it. And all of a sudden the crowds went from 2,000 to 10,000, So, and then they were back up, and then they were happy. And so really a lot depended on, everybody can't be a winning team. So it was the teams, and some of them didn't have a big history behind them of doing well and then having a couple of poor seasons and doing well again. So it was like, oh, they kind of pulled the plug, sort of thing. So
right.
Yeah.
So much history, so many incredible memories, Paul. To kind of wrap it up, as you mentioned at the very, very beginning of our conversation, now you've been to so many different places, but San Diego's your home. What made you decide to make San Diego your home?
Yeah, probably the same as everyone, in the fact that it's so livable, isn't it? It's such a beautiful place. I mean, the fact that I was wanted a different breed, because any player that came from England usually came with their wife, maybe a kid, something like that. And I came out on my own. I didn't know a soul. So I had nothing to really go back to. So the first time I came to San Diego, I know and I had some good cities out there. So it's not like San Diego's you couldn't live anywhere else. But and I really enjoyed Houston. I enjoyed Chicago. Florida's nice when it's not roasting hot. But I think in a way, I'm so glad I did settle down here. Because I did so much traveling when I was, in my 20s and early 30s, it's nice to be grounded. But certainly I'm an outdoor active person, so it works just perfect for me. I don't have the skin for it, but there's always hats and sunglasses and sunblock for that. So yeah, I mean, happy to be here and part of San Diego, and I still go down and root on for the Sockers. I want them to win another championship.
Incredible stuff, Paul. You are without question a Sockers legend and part of this legend series, so appropriately coming in as a champion, having 4 different rings in those first 5 years of your career, and then just playing, man. You were just playing and kept that career going. And I still know you're worth a good 5 to 10 minutes in that alumni game, no matter what.
Yeah. I was paid to have the time of my life.
Exactly right. Well, it's been a true pleasure of mine to get a chance to revisit some of those times of your life here on the Sockers Legend series. And I sure hope that all of our fans here watching on YouTube and listening on our Sockers Overtime podcast feed have enjoyed it as well. We'll be back in the new year with more legends, and also with Jerry Jimenez and I coming along to give you full coverage of the 2021 MASL season as the Sockers become like Wolverhampton was instead of the Wolves, the Wanderers, and they were we'll be the San Diego Wanderers.
Yeah.
Going to be on the road all the time.
Yeah. I know. And goodbye to and have Merry Christmas to all the San Diego Sockers. Keep cheering on your team. We have something special here. So, and thanks for all the work you do, Craig, for promoting soccer. We need people like you.
Oh, I appreciate it, Paul. Thanks to yourself. Thanks to all our listeners for joining us here on Sockers Overtime.
Stood up by Ben Collins. Back comes San Diego. Collins to center. To the overlapping Thompson UC, and he's got Dougherty with him. They score! What a play by UC, and it's 6-4. You could see it develop on the turnover as Ben Collins stripped Preki. And what a finishing touch as UC hit a bullet to Paul Dougherty. And that's the kind of play they expected from Thompson UC. And look at this service. Outside of the right foot, bending toward Dougherty. And remember, UC has to remember about Dougherty's size. Paul gets up high enough. And we go to a break.